Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Gettin Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. I'd like to welcome you, whether you're watching this live or if you're watching this sometime in the future. Of course, we're glad to have you along for the ride for the next 45 minutes at least. Probably the show is probably about an hour, but the drawing itself is 45 minutes. And tonight is going to be a ride because I'm going into this one without a very clear plan, which is always a little bit dangerous. I've had several different visions in my head, and at the last minute, I'm kind of changing my plan here. So this one should be interesting, so stick around to the end to see what happens. But like usual, I'm joined by my good friend Ashley, who's sitting right over there. How are you doing this evening, Ashley?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking. I hope you folks are doing well. I've enjoyed watching Matt oscillate back and forth between what materials he's going to use tonight. So yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. We'll see where we end up.
Well, it's going to be a ride. I don't know how fun it's going to be for me. It'll be fun for you guys, of course. If you are watching this live on YouTube, there is a chat box, of course. You can ask questions and post comments. If you do have a question or comment that's directed specifically at Ashley or I, we ask that you use the super chat function. It does cost a little bit of money, but that will help out our channel, and it'll show your support as well. And it'll also get your comment or question highlighted there so everybody sees it, and we have a good chance of answering it if you do that. The photo reference for the drawing that I'm going to be working, or the drawing that I'm going to create tonight, it can be found on the community tab. To find that, you can click on the little icon of my face in the corner of this video. That will take you to the YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And you can click on the community tab and you will see the photo reference, and you'll also see a link back to the video, which is the one that you're watching right now. So you can get back into the live broadcast. So that's where the photo reference is. And got to tell you about the membership program at thevirtualinstructor.com. We have got tons and tons and tons of video instruction over there on a variety of drawing and painting media and subject matter. We've got courses that include illustrated ebooks and step-by-step videos. There's also weekly live lessons that we broadcast to members each week, and those live lessons are stored so you can go back and watch any of the live lessons we've ever done. There's also weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute. I just published this week's critique today. And there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. For some of you, school is starting back. I know Ashley goes back to school tomorrow.
That's right.
And I remember the days of having to figure out what I was going to teach. Well, all that stuff is figured out for you. An entire year-long curriculum. It's really longer than a year because you can't really get all that stuff done in a year anyway. But all of your resources, all your videos, handouts, PowerPoint presentations, all that stuff is included in what I like to call the Ultimate Lesson Plan, which is part of the membership program. I'll leave a link in the description below this video if you want to check it out. Everyone starts out with a week-long trial for free. You can see if the program is right for you. And if you're a member, you get all of our courses. You get everything. Also, if you want to check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, you can do that as well. I'll leave a link in the description below for that as well. And that will put you on our newsletter list, which will send you a ton of free art lessons. And you can check that out again in the description below. Hello to everyone in the chat box. It's time for me to procrastinate. It's time for me to put off committing to this for a minute. While
you're not committing, I would mention Dale's commitment. He's celebrating 50 years of being married tomorrow.
Wow.
So 50. Is that the golden anniversary? Silver's 25.
It's gotta be
gold. It's got to be platinum. Congratulations, Dale. And I'm happy for you, and I hope that you've been on a wonderful adventure with your wife all these years.
Absolutely. To be married for that long is quite an accomplishment, and I hope to do the same with my wife. I know if we ever are not married, it will be because one of us is probably dead. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I just hope we make it to 50. We live long enough to see that see that milestone.
Right.
Ourselves.
And I think about my kids, and my youngest child just turned 7, and my oldest one is getting ready to graduate college. It's hard for me to conceive making it that long to see the 4th child actually graduate from high school.
Well, Matt,
it seems like such a long journey.
I hope you do. That's only what is that? 11 years from now.
Yeah, it's a long time. It seems like an eternity to me. All right, enough of the chit chat. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I still don't have a real solid plan, so we'll see what happens, but we'll go ahead and switch over. And not having a solid plan also includes pushing the wrong buttons, which is what I do all the time. I do that very frequently.
Pushes everybody's buttons, but not the right ones.
Yep, that's the way it is. All right, well, here's the photo reference we're working from.
Nice. Love those complementary colors.
And I've done a little bit of editing to this. I cropped it down. I got this from Pixabay, and I enhanced the colors a little bit, not too much. We're going to be focusing in on the bird's head tonight. We're going to be concentrating on rendering that to as highest level as we possibly can get in the time frame. But we also are going to include other visual elements to insinuate the location of the bird, maybe add some colors here and there, and also the branch that's kind of going in a diagonal across the picture plane as well. The paper I have here is Canson Mi-Teintes pastel paper. This is kind of, it might look gray on your screen, but it's actually got a little bit of brown in it. I'm trying to think. It's kind of like a mix between yellow ochre and maybe just a Van Dyke brown or something like that. It's got a little bit of
I don't know what the name of this color is.
Yeah, it's hard to describe, isn't it? It's like khaki.
Is this what people call taupe?
Khaki, taupe, beige. Beige would be good.
There's vague words that mean different things to different people, right?
And to be honest with you, a little bit of my concern and apprehension is with the paper, because we're going to need to create some contrast here. And a lot of the values are kind of similar to the value of the paper. So we're gonna kind of have to work to push that value contrast. I'm using Prismacolor Premier colored pencils. I just happened to pick up a really old one. Let's pick up a newer one here with the shiny metal on the side. These are wax-based colored pencils. They're my favorite brand of colored pencils. They're really soft and buttery once you build up layered applications, which is what we're going to need to do in order to render this completely. And I also have some PanPastels handy. Now, this is where my plan is kind of, my lack of a plan is kind of deviating. My original plan was to put in PanPastels around the outside of the body of the bird. We may still do that to create the contrast. And we can also bump up some of the colors with the PanPastels. So we've got them handy, but we're not going to deal with them immediately. And the PanPastels are applied using these soft applicators, and that's S-O-F-F-T, I think.
S-O-F-F-T?
Yeah, or S-O-F-T-T. It's one of those. They repeat the letters.
It's a brand
name. Yeah. They're specifically made for applying PanPastels and working them around on the surface. So anyway, I really wanted to work with colored pencils, so I actually just decided I was going to work with colored pencils. And now when I get set down and ready to go, I wish that I would have said that I was going to work with pastels, but we need variety. And I feel like I've been working with pastels so much here recently. That's why I'm going to stick to the colored pencils tonight, which, both of those mediums are really some of my favorites. So it is what it is. Just the colored pencils are a little bit slower, and we only got 45 minutes here. So I think that's it. I think I've covered all the material. Oh, I do have a little bit of gouache here too. A little bit of gouache. And we will use this gouache, if necessary, to create some highlights there at the end. So we will take a look at this in just a minute. But first, I realized as I switched to the wrong camera again, what I need to do here is make sure that is the wrong angle again. Guys,
going on over there?
I am having all kinds of difficulties tonight. What I need to do here on this
bird is in Matt's head.
Screen is turn on the timer and then go back over here. That way, when we switch camera angles, the timer is still on. Now I've pushed all the buttons. Now, what you don't understand, somebody said you got this, Matt. This is only like my this has got to be like 100+ episode of a live of Gettin Sketchy
at least.
And with the live streams, the live lessons, I mean, I don't know how many of those there are. It's got to be about around 400. So you know, I should be used to this
That's
by
what
now.
happens when you've done something so much. It's when you start to make mistakes because you feel so comfortable.
Well, there's, in all fairness, where I'm sitting and the controller that I push the buttons, the glare from the lights is preventing me from reading anything on them. So I'm like just reaching and pushing buttons.
It was the glare.
Anyway, I've got some gouache. We may
Okay.
use it, we may not. We'll see.
All right, so it may be mixed media and it may not.
Right.
It's going to start with colored pencils.
Right. We know that
Right.
colored pencils are going to
Okay.
be involved here tonight. So that's one thing we've got going for us. All right. I'm going to start here with a very dark red. This is Tuscan red.
All right.
And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer here. 45 minutes on the
Right.
clock.
We're
So the
off.
first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to plan out where my cardinal is located on the paper. So I'm going to kind of create a mark for the top of its head, or where I think the top of its head is going to be. And I can see that the edge of the beak and this edge of the head doesn't make it to the halfway point. It's about
Not
halfway. So I'm just using these simple measurements here to figure out where the bird's going to be located. Then I'm going to draw a very light line for the body, the upper part of the body, where it gets close to the edge of the picture plane. Then I'm going to allow that to curve back around and pay attention to where this branch is located. And this branch is, I don't know, about right here coming off the edge of the picture plane. I'm just drawing all of this with the Tuscan red right now. I know this is really light right now. And then we can kind of look at the negative space right here to alter the breast of the bird.
It's one thing I like about this composition are all those empty spaces. It kind of creates a little rhythm around the bird, and they all seem to direct our attention back to it.
Yeah, it's got a lot of movement in it, eye movement. And then the bottom of the tail feathers here, going off the bottom of the picture plane, and then the bottom of the regular feathers. What are these feathers called?
The wings.
The wings. Very good. All right. Now I'm thinking about the width of the body here.
Good looking start to your shape. Very nice.
And just making kind of an estimate. And now we'll grab a line for the rest of the branch. Right across there. And now let's go back up here to the head and try to get some of these shapes planned out. And we've got kind of an additional triangle that comes up here. Right off the top.
Charles says those are called the primary feathers.
The primary
And
feathers.
if I was a bird, the feathers I used to fly with would definitely be the most important ones to me. So I think I second that, Charles. Primary feathers.
I like primary feathers.
Mhm. And he's a primary color.
The only thing, that's what I was going to say. The only thing it is. In this particular case, it is a primary color. It makes sense for it to be the primary wing there. All right, so I'm just kind of getting a shape for the beak now. You can see I'm still drawing very, very lightly here. And we'll bring that line up, over, and back up. So I'm using basically at the beginning the edges of the picture plane to find the contours of the outer contours of the bird. And then after I've got that in place in this particular drawing, I can go back in and kind of refine some of the shapes that I see, like the upper part of the head kind of comes out. So like this little division point that happens right down here, where we've got that dark area of the feathers here. And once we've got our outer shape in place, we can go in and put some of these inner shapes in, like the beak, the edges between dark and light that we see in this particular case. And we can also use the information we've got to try to figure out where that eye is located.
It pretty much blends in with his mask, but it's
It
there.
does,
You can
yeah.
still see its back contour. What a beautiful bird.
Yeah, that's one of the things that makes this bird, this specific cardinal, really cool is he kind of has a stern look.
Yeah, that was mentioned in the chat. He looks serious.
He is
He
serious.
does. He's craned his neck around. He's looking at something intently.
Serious
And
cardinal.
I love how his body goes one way and the head brings us back into the middle of composition. It's very nice.
Kind of got an edge where we get darker value, and then we get down to the rest of the body here. And again, we're going to be focusing most of our attention on the upper part of the body and the head. But we are going to get some loose information about all the other things that are happening in the composition. But because we're so strained or restrained with time, we're going to focus on the upper part of the body. So I'm drawing this line right here to indicate where we've got an area where the value gets a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not an outline, but it's still a contour where the shadow meets the light. Very important to recognize. Very good.
And then we'll draw a line for the edge of the primary feathers.
See, we're learning. So as mentioned in the chat before, the cardinal is the state bird of a number of states, North Carolina and Virginia and Ohio. I'm familiar with, but is the cardinal your state bird out there? If you live in a different state than those, and the cardinal is your state bird, let us know, because I grew up as a child in Virginia and had no idea that cardinals, were pretty wide-ranging in terms of their territory and appreciated enough to be the state bird for multiple states. So beautiful bird. We see them all the time here in our area, and I know from reading your comments that some of you folks haven't seen a cardinal in person. I know there's beautiful birds in your area that Matt and I don't get to see, but this is a very common bird. I see them pretty much every day.
Yeah,
until
much
until in the wintertime.
Pretty much every day. You can see them in the winter too sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes if they don't have
early
too harsh of a
spring.
winter. Yeah.
In fact, my elementary school mascot was the Cardinals.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right, we got our shapes in place now. Let's go ahead and start working on the head here. I'm actually going to start with a light pink, of course. And I'm going to start over here where we can see a little bit of that pink on the edge. I'm going to try to bring out a little bit more color in this, like I always like to do. So I'm going to bump up a little bit of the color and try to make our color relationships a little bit stronger.
We've already been trying to figure out where you might see purple in this composition.
There's purple. I've got purple ready to go. There's also,
there you have it, folks.
Right on the edge of this beak here. I've already put this Tuscan red down, but let's go ahead and, oh, this is crimson red. That's why it looks a little different. Tuscan red, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line for where the top beak meets the bottom beak, because there is a little bit of pink over here too.
All right, looks like Cardinal is the state bird of Illinois.
Yeah, I heard the other day that about the Cardinals being a very popular state bird.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's just because they're so easy to pick out from nature, the males anyway. They're so bright red against the green like we see in your composition.
Maybe so. All right, next I'm going to switch over to a 10% cool gray here. I'm not going to use any white tonight. I'm going to use the cool gray for the white. And I'm going to go ahead and put down a little bit of information about the highlight on the top of the beak. And around the outside of the eye, there is a little bit of a lighter area. So we'll go ahead and get that down. And I'm going to go ahead and go into the eye and just put a light application of that 10% cool gray right there as well. Maybe a little bit on these little bits that stick out here, just preparing to put down more colors on top.
That's the beauty of working on a toned ground. Matt can start with a light color, and we can see it. You can work in both directions, towards the light and towards the dark. Buddy asks, how do you figure out the size or proportion of a picture?
That's a great question. What I do is I use Photoshop. I take the image into Photoshop, of course, and then I put in different heights and widths. And whatever height and width I put in there, Photoshop automatically gives me uh, a proportional, whatever I put in for the length, it will make the height proportional to that.
Right. It figures out does the math for you.
Right. So very quickly I can determine what size I want to work with. And in this particular case, I didn't mention this, but this measures 5 inches by 6 2/4 inches. All right. All right. Now I switched over to an orange.
6 2/4 inches.
6 1/4 inches.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's a strange way to say half.
Yeah.
All right, very good. 5 by 6.5, and this is Canson Mi-Teintes paper.
It is.
All right.
And we've decided that this color is beige.
I don't remember who said, but I believe
Buff?
someone else described it as light mocha, and I think mocha
Light
is a
mocha.
color
I like
name
that.
that Canson uses.
That's pretty accurate.
that
to
might
what
be-
this
yeah,
is.
that might
Light mocha.
Might be correct. It might even say that on the sticker.
All right, a little bit of orange here. And I'm using a very light touch with this application at this point. Just kind of getting some of the base colors in place. And we'll go ahead and bring some of this down to the upper part of the body. Now we're gonna be quite a bit looser as we work away from the head.
Yeah, that'll be nice. The head is already in a good place as far as being a focal point, with some leading lines and edges taking us there. But if Matt's level of rendering or details are greater in the head than everywhere else, then that'll certainly draw our eye there first. Buddy, I see your question, and yes, you can use Photopea to check or to resize a reference to the proportion that you would like your paper to be as well. Photopea, for those of you who haven't used it, is an online application that you can navigate to just using like Google or Bing, and it's sort of a Photoshop copy program. Of course, you have to look at ads. You can't be a paid subscriber, so there are no ads. But you can use a lot of the tools that are very, very similar as to those in Photoshop through your browser.
Okay, we're going to switch over to a poppy red now. And this is a
Pretty
little bit
warm
of
red.
yeah, it's a very warm red. It's almost a red orange. It is really a red orange. And this is a little bit darker too. So we're going to start thinking about directional stroking here. So we're going to make our strokes flow with the contours of the feathers there. You can see that this is just a little bit darker than the oranges and the pinks that we've added. So we're going to start by adding this in some of the darker locations. With colored pencils, it's important to layer your applications. That's how you build up depth in the color and also interest in the piece. So you really don't want to rush unless you have a 45-minute timer.
William, I see your question as well about using black paper with colored pencils, and Matt and I both do that. I don't know when we did it last here on Getting Sketchy, but I do remember that I drew, what's that?
The frog, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That
I
was
drew
the
a
last-
frog on black paper last season. I think I did a rooster on black paper with colored pencil sticks, which are no longer made, but it's still the same material as the filament in colored pencils. So you may be able to go back a few seasons and see a rooster on black paper. I remember those two distinctly. I'm sure there's more.
All right, we'll work a little bit into the area underneath the head here too, with this poppy red. Again, allowing it to be a little bit looser as we work down.
Just using the direction you see the feathers as a guide, kind of creating color value and also capturing some texture at the same time. All right, Lord Engine remembers the rooster. He liked that one. Thank you. I like that one too. So Mark asks, how is working with colored pencils different than pastel pencils?
Well, with pastel pencils, we can go over the top of applications with another opaque application. And with colored pencils, it's a little bit harder to do that with lighter colors. In fact, it's a lot harder to do that with lighter colors. So you have to kind of plan your applications with colored pencils. That's why I'm starting pretty tentatively with light applications, and then I'll progressively get darker and more heavy with my applications as we go through the process. Pretty starkly different, actually. All right, let's see. Let's get some darker tones in here. So I'm going to do a mixture of dark umber and indigo blue for this. These areas, we may use a little bit of black in this if we don't get enough contrast, but I'm going to stick with using a combination so that our black is a little bit more colorful.
Yeah, that combination will give you a very dark umber.
And we can see that dark eye in there. Get a little bit more solid with the application here. And let's go ahead and get a little bit of yellow in that eye, just a little bit. When we start getting too dark, that's probably a little too yellow. So I'm going to go back with the...
Matt, we have a super chat.
Oh,
PJ
awesome.
Hall. Thank you for your support, PJ Hall. I hope you're enjoying the program tonight.
Well, that means we need to have a cheer. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah!
Really does help the channel out. And you get to watch that silly cheer thing, which is
That silly animation.
pretty cool. All right. So again, I am not using black here. This is dark umber.
That bird is looking more and more stern.
Well, I want him to look, I want to capture the sternness. That's part of the interest in this particular bird. He's interesting partly because of his stern look, his serious manner. We'll bring a little bit of this dark umber up into the head here too.
Jan, I was holding my breath too that Matt would push the right button for that cheer.
Yeah, you know what?
This is another opportunity.
You guys have lost all, what I need to do is I need to hire a producer. Instead of trying to do all this stuff myself, I know I need to do that.
Yeah, we need a switchboard man.
Yes. Yeah. So like right now I want to change camera angles, but I'm afraid to do that. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. I changed camera angles.
Very good.
And it worked.
This is a nice angle too. Got to show it off a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to bring with a lighter application down underneath the eye a little bit here. We're going to start lighter here, but this is an area where we might use the gouache if we see the need. And I might just end up using colored pencils for the little bit of contrast around the edges that we need in this drawing anyway. Let's change again. Look at that. It worked again.
Well, practice makes perfect.
Well,
right?
we're not gonna talk too soon. We're not gonna be happy about that too quickly. Because there's plenty of time for me to mess up.
26 more minutes.
But you know what? I think that's a little bit of the charm of the show.
Sure.
Like with any live broadcast, you don't know what's going to happen. There's no telling. All right, into the shadow a little bit. So we got a little bit of red in place. I'm just going over the top of that a little bit. Oh, and look.
Did your elbow do that?
No, I forgot to turn it off.
Oh, okay.
I have to turn it on and then turn it off. And I switched camera angles. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So Mary Elizabeth wonders, what does a producer do? A producer makes things work smoothly. Plan everything out.
Yeah, a producer would be controlling the camera angles. Instead of me controlling the camera angles,
And they'd have their headset on, and Matt would have a little little speaker in his ear so they could coach him along.
They would ensure wouldn't have anybody in my ear because
Well, that's what producers do on shows sometimes.
people would, if I had a producer, of course it would be somebody I got along well with. So I'm sure that they would be saying things in my ear to distract
Right,
me.
to make you laugh.
Right. And I would just be randomly laughing at things. At least
All right,
that's
we
what
got
I
another
would
super
do.
chat, Matt. You're going to have to push that button again.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to push the button.
Yeah, CJ9. Thank you, CJ9. And remember,
you so much.
You guys can also make a comment. Your super chat. Of course, you don't have to. We definitely appreciate your acknowledgement nonetheless.
Absolutely. We really appreciate that. Now, I'm going to have to turn the cheer off.
Just to make sure it's turned
Just
on.
to make sure. So it'll randomly cheer again. And you know, when it's not a super chat, it's kind of annoying.
It's like we're just laughing at each other from the bottom corners of our screen.
All right. Now, you might be wondering why I'm using dark umber instead of black here. And the reason is so that I can create a more natural looking black and a more colorful black. And that adds a little bit of spice to the art, and it makes it actually look a little bit more realistic. Flat black can make an image look flat if you're not careful, and unnatural. All right, let's go in with the indigo blue now, and mix up this black here. So, if you want your black to be a little cooler, then you are a little bit heavier with indigo blue. If you want your black to be a little bit warmer, then you can be a little bit heavier with the dark umber. So you have control over the color temperature of your black.
Yeah,
better
than using a flat black. I use black, but a lot of times, and Matt does this too, just mix a color into it. Mix a warmer, cool color into it to give it some sort of a temperature variation, help it to harmonize with the other colors in your composition.
And, we might use a little bit of black here towards the end. I'm going to need to create contrast around the edges of the body of the bird. And I use a little bit of black for that. We'll see. But so far, I haven't even looked at the timer.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I'm still just... But now I'm really curious.
You've got more than half of the show left.
Oh,
by 30 seconds.
That's great.
Yeah, you're doing well.
That's
especially
great.
for colored pencil. It's gonna be a really slow medium, but Matt busted out the contour drawing in like a minute, so it really gave him the whole show to render.
Well, also really concentrating on the head, I think, is helping too. And instead of me feeling like I gotta float around and work really fast.
But he asks, does it increase the contrast using warm and cool colors side by side? Certainly. There's 4 aspects to color. There's hue, temperature, intensity, and value. And you can use all 4 of those or any 4 of those to create contrast. And when your values are close together, sometimes you have to lean on intensity or temperature to create that contrast. Good question.
Yeah, contrast deals with difference. So any type of difference is going to create contrast. So that can be textural difference, that can be color contrast or color difference. It can be value contrast or difference, which is what we typically think of when we talk about contrast. But contrast is really any difference, anything that's different. All right, a little bit of this indigo blue in some of the shadowed areas, and that creates a nice contrast against some of the more oranges and yellows. And you can see how we're getting a little bit more color in this image, even in the shadowed areas, by using the blue and the brown instead of the black. There's a wonderful little shadow that happens right up here on the back, right over the primary feathers.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and bring some of that indigo blue down
I
here.
thought that may be where you work in a little bit of purple potentially.
No. Well, yeah, maybe a little bit.
You could use a red violet in there.
I was actually going to use a little bit of purple on the beak.
Well, you've got the indigo,
and there's a little bit of purple
so.
right here too, and there's a little bit of purple in the black. That's the other area that I wanted to add a little bit of purple. So thanks for reminding me. Go ahead and grab that purple now before we go in here and start trying to pull out some lighter areas. Bring that purple into the beak, especially on the lower part of the beak there.
Yeah, adds a little bit of
some color in there. A
little bit more excitement.
And then we'll incorporate some of that purple down here a little further down on the body. And a couple of areas where things are going to be a little bit looser. All right, we're going to give this a little bit of a blend in just a minute, but let's add a little bit of red because we haven't really added red yet. I've added a little bit of poppy red. Let's go with Scarlet Lake next. And this bird is really pretty orange. Really a little bit more orange than it is red. But
yeah, it really is, especially with the light it's hitting.
Go in with a little bit of this red here and there and try to make the color a little bit more bold, bring out a little bit more contrast, and we're going to bring in some yellows too. So again, pulling strokes in the direction of little feathers here and there. And you can see the texture of this paper too in these applications. We're going to do some burnishing in just a minute, which will eradicate some of the texture of the paper. But we're still going to allow the texture of the paper to show through in some of the other areas.
You're going to do that with a colorless blender?
Yeah.
Michelle says that looks fabulous so far.
Thank you.
It does.
That's why you should always go into a drawing with no plan at all.
Yeah. Just kind of respond to what's happening out there sometimes. Sometimes
that's really kind of what I'm doing.
Sometimes having too rigid of a plan keeps you from taking chances.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I switched back to our orange. This is purely orange. There's nothing fancy about the name of this color that I'm using here. Go ahead and put a few bolder marks here as we start to define some of the feathers. As they start to get a little bit looser over the top of the body.
Barb has an interesting comment and question. She said, do you ever start with a foundation of yellow under red or other colors? I know an artist who swears by this technique to give the object more luminosity. And it's true. It's not that uncommon, I don't think, to put a color, a light application of a color underneath the color that you intend to create. Now, I actually did something a little bit like that 2 of my drawings ago, but it was with white. I went over it with yellow. Now I know white is a neutral. White's a neutral, so it really doesn't have any intensity, but it seems bright on a black piece of paper, and I was working on dark paper. So I had put a very light application of white down, and then used the yellow. But it was more for a different reason in that case. It was to give the yellow a little bit more covering power, because the yellow is a bit more translucent in the materials that I was using, or the set of oil pastels that I was using. You can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like toning in it. You can use toned paper, or you can tone areas of your paper. Right.
There's a lot of artists, especially when you're painting with an opaque painting medium, that like to put down, a ground color like red or some other kind of color that's going to show through in areas in the painting. that add interest and add additional pop to the colors that go over the top of it. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about or not, but that I see that very frequently. I've done that myself.
Mike tells us that the cardinal is the state bird of 7 states, more than any
Wow.
other bird, the most popular state bird in the country.
Popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's looking sharp, Matt.
Oh, thanks.
Your bird and where you're putting lights and darks in the head really make him feel dimensional. Even more so a little bit, I think, than the reference.
Oh, well, thanks.
It's just a little bit of extra light and dark around that little puff of feathers where his cheek would be. I love that. It's projecting a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going here. And I'm going to bring a little bit more red down into the belly. Then we're still going to get some yellow in there. But I really want to create a contrast between the lighter part where light is hitting and where it starts to get a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll work this area down as far as we possibly can. And I got to be a little bit choosy on what we render fully and what we don't. All right, well, we'll bring a little bit of purple into that shadow. There's definitely some purple in these wings. And a little bit of blue there too with the indigo blue.
Boy, those colors really make this cardinal pope.
That's a good one. It seems almost strange to use blue in some of these areas, doesn't it?
Well, you're creating a mixture, not a blue bird.
Right,
and then
right.
in a shadow, and if the natural color is warm, a cool color, any cool color, blue or blue green or blue violet, is going to lower the intensity of that warm color, and that's what we need usually in a shadow.
All right, I actually think I need a little bit of a color that I did not grab. So I have to look for it over here. Looking for a sienna. Yeah, just something a little bit more reddish brown. Now those talons are actually pretty grayish.
Mm-hmm.
Start with, let's see, what color is this? 50% French gray.
Pretty warm gray, somewhere between
it is
gray
pretty
and brown.
warm, and I think I want some cooler tones in there. So we'll get this down first. And again, we're going to go back to the head in just a minute. Now a little bit of the dark umber. We'll give a quick little indication of a shadow here. A bit of variety. But we don't want to have too much detail here away from the head.
That's right. You got to pull back down there.
Right. All right, let's use 10% cool gray here. A quick little highlight on the branch.
Now, we've got 11 minutes left, and the cardinal looks great. Matt hasn't worked in the background yet. The background values are not very dissimilar right now from where the light is hitting the cardinal. So the colors of the cardinal will more apparent. They'll emerge near the end of the drawing when Matt throws a little bit of color around them. So
Yeah.
we look forward to that.
Well, I'm probably
Jan just said the same thing.
I'm probably just going to put it mostly around the head.
Okay.
A little bit of contrast around the head.
Frame them out a little bit.
Yeah.
Keep our attention in that area through contrast. Very good.
All right, let's bring in a little bit more yellow. And we're going to use canary yellow here. Ironic. We're using canary yellow on a cardinal. Orangey.
Canary yellow on the card.
And that yellow is going to contrast with that purple a little bit. Are you laughing at me knocking everything over?
I'm laughing at Jan's comment. He put the 30-second background coloring frenzy. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes we have to bust that background out fast.
The colors in the background are going to be pretty loose. And I'm just going to create a little bit of dark back there for some contrast.
This is going to be a great example of one of the ways to create, or actually a number of ways to create emphasis in an artwork. And I think that emphasis is a principle of art that enjoys popularity sort of on a revolving timeline. I've noticed through our art history, during the period of the Impressionists, the French Impressionists, latter half of the 1800s, some of those artists were less keen on the idea of any one area of your composition feeling more important than another area of your composition. And it goes back to their philosophy about their subject being light and color. So if some of the Impressionist artists or Impressionists of today even were to work with this cardinal, they would like to see it in their own mind and in their philosophy, not a picture of a cardinal, a picture of color and light. And that makes the light on the leaf behind the cardinal just as important as the cardinal. So it's sort of emphasis has been more or less appreciated over the years by different artists. I love the principle of art emphasis because it's a great way to be able to use a still picture to tell a story. And the emphasis doesn't have to draw our attention to only one place. You can have multiple focal points, a dominant focal point, and then a secondary focal point. And in that way, control the movement of your viewer's eyes so they see one thing first and then another thing second. And in that way, you may be able to put together a brief story. It's a great principle of art to work to master.
So I am going to put a little bit of color and value around the outside. We're just going to let this fade out into the color of the paper.
Mark says colored pencils should have a 5-minute handicap. Should we give them 5 extra minutes? They are a slow medium. I love that.
Well, you don't have to give me 5 extra minutes. I'm going to take
You're
5
gonna take it
extra
anyway.
minutes.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to give it to me. All right, so we got this blue over here, and the blue is this is what I'm using here. I'm using the indigo blue. The blue is contrasting the orange, of course, and adding a little bit more pop.
Yeah, look at that.
This blue and orange are complementary.
See it happening now.
And there is a little bit of red in here, but my initial thought here is I need to incorporate a little bit of green, but I don't know if I should or not. What do you guys think?
Buddy, I see you remember those Principle of Art articles that I wrote a few years ago, and one of them was about the Principle of Art emphasis. And in fact, school starts tomorrow, and my AP students will be reading that article on day 1. So the very first thing we start with in my AP classes are sort of a overview of the principles of art. I think it's really important for them to be thinking about those while they work towards developing their own voice in their artwork. So thank you for remembering those articles. So a lot of fun, and I get a lot of mileage out of those even in the classroom. Charles asks, can Matt use PanPastels for the background? He could.
I can, but I've decided not to.
Okay.
And I've decided to stick with the colored pencils
All the way through.
all the way through, because I think that this is, if I've introduced PanPastels at this point, it would change the style of the artwork. But one of the ideas I had with the PanPastels was to, mix the media together, mix the mediums together. And it would have resulted in a much looser depiction of the subject, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's why I felt, and I was telling you that I was unprepared. Well, not really unprepared, but I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure what direction I was going to go with it. But once I got into the drawing, and I kind of had an understanding with how the style was going to turn out, then I made the decision to stick with the approach that I was using here.
Well, Mary Elizabeth points out that one of your decisions was no green. You decided to go away from the green after all.
I did.
But
and
you're using colors in the background that are in the bird.
Right.
A little bit. So there's creates some harmony there instead of that super high contrast in terms of complementary relationship that we see in the reference.
All right. I am going to use just a little bit of black here. Just a touch. Just because I want this to be a little bit darker. And I'm using this over the top of the areas that I used the brown and the blue together. So we're going to have some color in those areas. I just want to make it just a little bit darker here and there. Especially in these shadowed areas.
Mm-hmm. But he points out that harmony is another principle of art. That's right.
I'm also going to do just a little bit of burnishing here real quick.
There's our colorless blender.
Yep. Just going to mix some of these colors together. Smooth some of the transitions.
If you don't have a colorless blender, you can just keep using the colors that you want to mix together back and forth and building them up until they sort of burnish themselves. And then sometimes you can get away with using your white pencil, especially if it's I don't want to say, we'll say a less high quality brand. Sometimes a white Prismacolor will actually partially cover a color just because it's so soft. Some other softer lines of colored pencils will too. But if you've got maybe a Crayola white, you can use that as a burnisher sometimes pretty well. If you don't have a colorless blender. Let's see, Barb was wondering where can she get the reference photo? Now, Matt, that is by clicking on your face under the video. Is that right?
Yes. Click on my face, and that will take you to the YouTube channel. Then from there, click on the community tab, and that will take you to the reference.
There we go.
All right, a little bit more yellow in here. Right along the front of the breast here. And maybe a little bit up here as well. And
Mike, the principles of art articles,
they're on the blog.
They're on the blog. Yeah, they're blog articles, and you can, a lot of times you can just type in the principle of art that you'd like to read about into a search bar, and then also virtual instructor, or you could type in my name, Ashley Hurst, and it'll come up near the top. There's one on balance, and then there's an article on variety, harmony, and unity all together, because those three kind of pull and push each other at the same time. So it's really good to study variety, harmony, and unity together. And then there's the emphasis article, and gosh,
plus all the other elements of art too.
Yeah, and then of course the elements. And elements are foundational building block, and we use those to make the principles happen.
All right, so I just want to get maybe a couple little stray hairs here where it's a little bit lighter. I'm gonna use the cream for this. Just try to get some little specks of
glints of light.
Yeah, some of these little feathers. They almost look like hair.
I see those thank yous. You guys are welcome.
Make that eye a little more interesting too while we're at it. I know the time has got to be up now.
It is up. It just ran out a moment ago. But I didn't want to interrupt you. It's looking good. Throwing in some finishing touches, and you maintained your goal. You didn't get off track and start rendering too much in other areas. You know, Matt likes the details.
I do. I get distracted by details.
Right. He stayed away from them in those primary feathers and such.
The primary feathers, which is what they are, which is what we've learned. A little bit more black here. All right, we'll call this sketch finished.
All right.
It really is a sketch.
Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. You know, we used to see a lot more art like this, and of course, this is not uncommon. This way of drawing, kind of focusing on a specific area more than others. In the sketchbooks of the old masters, or preliminary sketches that the old masters, sometimes we would see them do to prepare for paintings, things like that. A study. It's a study, if you will. So I love it.
Yeah, it's truly a sketch tonight, guys. I like to kind of create more complete artworks and in the time we have here on Getting Sketchy, but with colored pencils, I think that this is a pretty good solution.
Yeah, Jan says, great drawing, Matt. Charles, it's a 10 out of 10.
Wow, thank you.
Jen says, looks great, and Charles adds, beautiful. Mary Elizabeth says, looks great.
Well, thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. All right, well, I guess that's it. I guess we'll switch over. I feel like I should continue to draw because I never finish within the time limit, but I think I finished tonight inside of the time limit.
I think it's a nice drawing, and I think it was a good drawing for some art philosophy talk. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for being here and for adding to the conversation.
All right, well, let's switch over here, and I'm going to try to push the right button. All right, the secret is I have to lean over so I get to where the buttons don't have the glossy
glare,
sheen
right?
on
You gotta move your head around
in order to see. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around through the completion of this. I played around a little bit with the materials beforehand, and I had I have a little practice sketch that I literally spent like 10 minutes on beside me, and it is like a completely different style, completely different everything. And I may try this sometime in the future, mixing the PanPastels, the colored pencils, and so on. it just produces a completely different style. What I ended up doing was a lot more controlled. I'm plenty happy with what was created tonight, but that is not the plan I had going into this. And I think that there's something important to learn from that as well. And that is, you have to allow yourself to be a little bit creative and just let things happen sometimes. I'm guilty of going into a piece of artwork and planning out everything and knowing exactly what I want to do in each area in my mind. I might not have a set specific plan, but I at least have an idea of what the style should look like and how I'm going to handle the materials. In this case tonight, I really wasn't sure until I started making marks on the surface, and I was still relatively happy with the style that emerged from that. And sometimes you just need to let that kind of stuff happen. And I think that's the lesson I'm going to take from this tonight for me personally. Ashley, do you have anything for anybody else?
I don't have anything to add. I will be drawing next week, and I don't know what I'm going to be drawing. So make sure you're back here so that you can draw along with me, whatever that may be.
All right. Well, we'll see what it is, and it will be quite a surprise.
I will make a determination on Saturday. I've set aside some time to make a decision. I do have some images picked out from a few weeks ago. I just started collecting some images in folders, so it may be one of those that I've already started mulling over a little bit, but we'll see.
Okay, very interesting. All right, guys, thanks again for watching. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It's absolutely free to do so.
Yeah. And
next week, like Ashley said, he will be doing the drawing. We'll continue on with this season of Gettin Sketchy. And for those of you who are going to be joining us over at thevirtualinstructor.com for the live lesson, we'll see you then. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. Good night, everybody.